tool we've ever had in the entire history of the world to bring more economic freedom to the world. So, thank you.
I'm setting up my own fucking...
And this was back in early 2011. And I wasn't the only one with this vision. Just about everybody who was involved with Bitcoin at that time had this vision. And we have a quote up here on the screen from Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, one of the companies that's helped more people in the entire world buy their first Bitcoin and digital currencies than any other company in the entire world. And Brian said, digital currency may be the most effective way the world has ever seen to increase economic freedom. If this happens, the implications are profound. It could lift many countries out of poverty, improve the lives of billions of people, and accelerate the pace of innovation in the world. That's a quote from somebody who understands the importance of cryptocurrencies. So let's talk about economic freedom and what is it? So economic freedom is a measure of how easy it is for members of society to participate in the economy. It has a number of factors such as how easy it is to start a business, whether property rights are enforced, free trade with people in other nations, the regulation of labor and business, and the stability of the currency. So can I see a quick show of hands? Who here paid for their attendance here in cryptocurrency? That's at least half the room there, if not more. So thank you all for doing that. But here's some other interesting things that come from economic freedom. Here we have two lists of countries. One list is the top countries with the most economic freedom in the world. And then we have a list of the countries with the least amount of economic freedom in the world. So the countries with the most economic freedom, we have countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, Switzerland, Australia, Canada. All pretty nice places to live that people think, wow, that sounds pretty nice. And the countries with the least amount of economic freedom around the world, we have countries like North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and a bunch of places that probably aren't as nice of a place to live as the countries on the first list there with more economic freedom. And we have some pictures here. So we have a picture of Hong Kong in the 1950s and Hong Kong today. And you can see, wow, what an incredible amount of difference in the development of the country there, the area. And we have a picture of Havana, Cuba in the 50s and Havana, Cuba today, where they had much less economic freedom in that time. And Cuba is not all that different today than it was back in the 1950s. And Hong Kong became this worldwide economic powerhouse. And basically the only difference there was they're both kind of little island type places. One just had a whole bunch more economic freedom than the other. So why is economic freedom important, right? Economic freedom is important because it leads to a higher per capita income. Who would like to have a higher income out here? Right? Every single hand I think is up in the audience there. Well, economic freedom leads to a higher income for everybody, rich and poor alike. Who wants to live longer rather than die younger? Right? I see most of the hands up again, right? Well, more economic freedom helps people live longer. Who thinks it's a good thing that people know how to read? Right? Economic freedom helps more people be able to read. Who wants to see poor people have a higher standard of living? Right? Again, just about every single person's hand in here is up. Economic freedom helps that as well. Who wants to live in a clean environment with clean water and clean air and wonderful nature? Well, countries with the most economic freedom help that as well. And if you look at the government-controlled lands, they're busy dumping nuclear waste and stuff like that there. So let's not have any of that. And this is one that really is really important to me. Who wants to see fewer wars and violent conflicts in the world? And actually, just maybe 2 hours ago this morning, I had a message on Telegram from somebody that I didn't know. And he told me he was living in Afghanistan. And he told me he just heard about cryptocurrencies for the first time. And he told me that he never believed that the wars in his country would stop. And he told me about it. He heard about cryptocurrencies and he heard about the ways they can stop wars. He said now he has hope that the wars in his country can stop. That's what's so exciting about cryptocurrency. And that brings us to the next one on the list. If there's fewer wars and violent conflicts, people are going to be happier around the world too. And another good one, less corruption and bribery. And here's a great chart, right? You have the most economically free countries in dark green, and the lighter the color down to red are the least economically free countries, and we can see the income level of the poorest 10% in society. And it's pretty clear if you're part of the poorest 10% of society, you would want to be living in one of the economically free countries because your income level is going to be much higher. And again, income per capita in those countries, the more economically free the country is, again, you can see very clearly you're going to have a higher per capita income in those countries. Adult literacy rate, the more economically free a country is, the more people are able to read. Life expectancy, here's the direct data. The more free a country is, the longer people are likely to live in that country. Unemployment, everybody likes to be able to earn an income. Well, the more economically free a country is, the lower the unemployment rate, right? Time and time and example again here of good things happening from economic freedom. Who loves babies? Right? Well, here's a real important one again, right? The more economically free a country is, the fewer babies are going to die at childbirth. So if you don't want babies to die at childbirth, support economic freedom. And I see a lot of people get confused, and they think that it's because of child labor laws that we don't have children in the workforce. But all of those laws came into existence after the society already had produced enough wealth where it was no longer required for actual survival for children to work. So if you look around the world today, it's the most economically free countries that have the lowest amount of child labor. And it's not because of child labor laws, it's because of the economic freedom that raised their standard of living. And so again, if you don't want to see, little young children sweating away all day in a sweatshop, economic freedom is the answer to solve that problem, not passing some silly laws restricting economic freedom. It's important to point out, though, that correlation does not prove causation. But when we see example after example in both theory and practice of greater economic freedom leading to better results for rich and poor alike, I think we can make some pretty darn strong inferences. And I remember when I was a high school student, I saw an example of this from a wonderful history teacher I had. They had a little picture on his desk, and it was a picture of a Porsche, and it was a picture of I think a Yugo or something like that, and it said capitalism versus communism. And I thought that was a pretty good example. And then he went on to explain in a little bit more detail. He's German. Mr. von Rassler was his name. And he said that Germany was such a great example because you had the same culture, the same natural resources, just two different forms of government. And in West Germany, you had a lot more economic freedom, and they were busy producing Porsches and Mercedes and BMWs, and people had a much higher standard of living than in East Germany, where about the only thing they were able to produce was a great big giant wall to prevent people from escaping because things were so horrible there. And that's a fantastic example of just how big a deal economic freedom is and just how important the system of government or lack thereof is in certain areas. So let's talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general's impact on economic freedom. It makes it easier to start a business, it enforces property rights, it promotes free trade, it enables freedom of contract, and it enables people to opt out of corrupt systems. And it does all of that equally for every single human being on the planet, regardless of what country they happen to have been born into, or what color their skin is, or what color their passport is, or anything at all. It doesn't discriminate one bit. So again, this is a quote from Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase.com. And this entire presentation I'm giving here is based off of a fantastic blog post that he put together, actually. So full credit to Brian for that. And again, he says, if we can create more economic freedom in the world, it will serve as a giant economic stimulus package for the world, accelerate innovation, reduce wars, make the poorest 10% better off, overthrow corrupt governments, and likely replace them with voluntary systems. That's my quote, my hope. And raise happiness so we can all be happier together. And I say Bitcoin and digital currencies are the best tools the world has ever seen to accomplish these goals. And that's why I'm involved here. But that brings us to the next slide. If you were a government, how would you stop this? And I think we should all put some thought into that. And I've been thinking about this for a while. And I'm not claiming that these people are working for the government or they're part of the government, but this is the strategy that they've been advocating. They've been advocating for 1 megabyte blocks, which intentionally create high fees, slow confirmations, and unreliable transactions. And all of those things result in fewer users, fewer nodes, lower adoption, less privacy, a lower Bitcoin market cap, and less censorship resistance. And so this is the share of Bitcoin's market cap in the entire cryptocoin ecosystem from last year at Anarchapulco to today. And we can see that it's dropped from about 85% market share to about 35% market share in just one single year. And we can see over the last couple of years, there were lots of people like myself worried that the blocks were going to become full and cause all those negative experiences when people try to use Bitcoin. And then the blocks became full. And at the same time, altcoins started getting all sorts of adoption. And today, Bitcoin only has about 35% market share in the cryptocoin ecosystem. And we can see at the exact same time that Bitcoin lost its market share, altcoins picked up the slack right away. And here's another fantastic graph showing the delayed adoption of Bitcoin. So in orange there, we can see the number of Bitcoin transactions happening each day. And then around March of 2017, the average block size reached 1 megabyte. SegWit activated a little bit after that, and here we are about almost 2 years later, and the blocks are about 1.1 megabyte at this point. But we can see the very clear trend line in green there, where Bitcoin would have been today. We would be having significantly more transactions, significantly more people using it around the world, significantly more adoption. And you can see in the lower part, Ethereum is busy picking up the slack for Bitcoin there, which is fine. So let's talk about what has the market done to solve this problem with Bitcoin. Well, I think it's pretty clear what the market has done. The market has moved to altcoins, and that's just fine. Who here has altcoin wallets and holds lots of altcoins? Yeah, just about every single person in the room, and that's wonderful. That's a way to route around the damage that's been caused, whether it was through maliciousness or just economic ignorance. That's where we're at today. So be sure to tell your friends about cryptocurrencies and everything else. Bitcoin.com is a fantastic website. We don't discriminate. We want everybody to use anything that's useful. And I suppose I'm a little bit disappointed because I think cryptocurrencies could have spread even farther around the world and had even more adoption and even more users all over the world. And we're several years behind schedule from where we would have been had not this entire scaling debate taken place. And if you look around on the internet and you see people calling names and calling Bitcoin Cash things like B-trash, well, calling names, that's not a reasoned argument. That's something that second graders do in school before they learn how to reason. And unfortunately, we don't have the ability to go back in time and change the past. But we do have the ability to build a better future for all of humankind, and cryptocurrencies are the answer to that. So join me in building that better future. Thank you all so much. And I see some core supporters lined up for the questions. I am more than ready, please. No name calling, please. Only reasoned arguments.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I saw the original talk title was Crypto with Heart. I would have also loved to see that one. And you said that you expect that BCH will overtake in the very near future Bitcoin. I would love to hear you say about if it wouldn't happen in the next for the next halving, which I think is in 2020, that the cashing or whatever people are calling it is happening. Do you think you're going to find back to your heart and to the original Bitcoin?
So there's maybe half a dozen different characteristics that define what Bitcoin is. And I think there isn't a real clear winner. Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash, either one of those have 100% of those characteristics. But if you go and read the original Bitcoin white paper, the title is Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And when you hear Bitcoin Core supporters arguing that Bitcoin Core should not be used as cash, and Bitcoin Cash supporters are arguing that Bitcoin Cash should be used everywhere as cash, it's pretty clear which one of those two versions of Bitcoin is more in line with the original Bitcoin white paper.
Hey, Roger, I really appreciate all the work you're doing as far as being an advocate for liberty, and I wish you 100% support with that and continue that effort. Real quickly, I just wanted to say something about, you had said that you wanted the core developers to increase the block size, but my question would be, if the core developers or a group of developers or a particular developer could force the entire Bitcoin node system, Bitcoin ecosystem to upgrade their nodes at the same time, wouldn't that compromise the decentralization? Wouldn't that mean that in the future, a government could go to one of these guys and say, well, you already forced everyone to upgrade their nodes at once, so we want you to implement our code now. So wouldn't that compromise either the decentralization of Bitcoin or split the network in two, with some people increasing the block size and some not? Thank you.
I think you already know that there isn't any one single person that could go and just snap their fingers and increase the block size. There's no one single core developer. It's a whole bunch of people. But if you look at the arguments that have been going on over the last couple of years in regards to this, one side, the Bitcoin Cash side, has supported free and open discussion consistently across every platform, every time, in every way. And many, many members of the Bitcoin Core side have done every single thing they can to suppress dissenting opinions, delete comments that are in opposition to their roadmap, and do everything that they can to silence the opposition from having their voice heard. And even if you don't know all the technical details and the ins and outs of the different arguments there, one side supporting free speech and the other side is openly hostile to free speech, I think that gives you a very strong indication as to which side you should be supported.
Yes! Free speech!
So like you, I think that cash, the cash usage of Bitcoin is the killer app. Unit of exchange, medium of exchange, unit of account, and store of value. I'm concerned mostly about the unit of account. I think you have solved the fee problem for exchanging value with Bitcoin Cash, but what are we going to do about the unit of account when it costs something like 0.0026 Bitcoin Cash to purchase anything of a daily value? What are we going to do about that problem?
Great question, and I have an even more fun answer. The answer is that we need to grow adoption to everybody around the world so that when it has a much bigger market cap, the price will be much more stable, there'll be less volatility, and the unit of account will be something much more akin to what people are used to. So the answer is get all your friends and family and everybody else around you using Bitcoin Cash, Dash, Ethereum, pick your pick. They're all wonderful at this point. It breaks my heart that Bitcoin's first mover advantage was destroyed. But again, we can't change the past. We can only work to build a better future, and that's what we need to do.
You said that economic freedom will improve environment protection. So how can cryptocurrencies be more sustainable in the sense that mining has been considered by some as an environmental hazard because of the amount of energy it needs? What would you say to them?
So luckily, thanks to the wonders of technology, things get better and better every single year. And one of those things that are getting better, faster, and cheaper are things like solar power. And we're right at the verge of solar power being one of the most effective, if not the most cost-effective means of generating electricity around the world. So in the future, we're going to see a whole lot more Bitcoin mining being done with solar rather than diesel generators or coal power plants or things like that. So technology is the answer to just about all of humankind's problems, and more technology is going to solve that problem as well.
Roger, as someone who also very much believes in free markets, I've got going a little off topic, but what are we going to do about all these college professors? Can we fix the colleges, or should we just blow them up?
I don't think we need to blow them up, but it would be wonderful if let's take all the federal universities, they get all sorts of federal funds. What if someone were to be elected to not president of the United States? And then auctioned off all of those universities to the highest bidders.
Yes.
And privatized the entire education system. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And then we could finally have a free market in education. And as anybody who's studied economics knows, free markets lead to a higher quality product with better customer service at a lower price. And it's true of every other area in the world, and it's certainly true about education as well.
Why would somebody invest in co-opting and breaking a platform that could be so easily forked?
It's hard to fork the social aspect of a platform. So if you stop and think for a moment and look at what happened to Bitcoin, I can't think of a more effective way to destroy it. Bitcoin's first mover advantage and all the adoption and the companies that we're getting on board with has completely been shattered into 1,000 different altcoins. Adoption's been delayed by years around the world. You can't stop Bitcoin, but they sure did manage to delay it. And I don't know if it was intentional or just out of ignorance, but I can't think of a more effective way to have disrupted the cryptocurrency movement around the world than what actually wound up happening to Bitcoin.
Terry, my question is, the original white paper, we know that as the block subsidy goes to zero, that transaction fees are going to be used for incentivizing the miners. So my question to you is, on Bitcoin Cash, how are you going to simultaneously maintain low transaction fees and incentivize the miners after the block subsidy goes to zero? Thank you.
So I hear this question often, what are you going to do when the block subsidy goes to zero? We have about 120 years until that happens. So I'm not worried about it today at all. We have 120 years to solve that problem. And there's already a solution to that problem. People can pay a very, very small fee per transaction. And if you're having billions and billions of transactions per day, that's plenty of economic incentive for miners to continue to secure the blockchain. And we have 120 years to solve that problem.
Hi, I'm a huge fan. I just want to know what kind of plans and development Bitcoin Cash has. I heard recently that it would upsize to 32 megabit blocks, and so any comment on that and any other development plans?
One of the things that I'm the most excited about that's coming to Bitcoin Cash that would have already been on Bitcoin Core years ago if not for the Bitcoin Core developers saying, no, we don't want Bitcoin to be used for any of these things, are tokens. Very soon on Bitcoin Cash, you'll be able to issue tokens, you'll be able to move them around, you'll be able to redeem them, destroy them, create them, all these exciting things that we see happening on Ethereum. And it's worth pointing out that originally Vitalik looked into Bitcoin Core and considered building Ethereum on top of Bitcoin. And the core developers were so hostile to any sort of these things being built on top of Bitcoin that he said, okay, I guess I'm not going to do that. I'll build Ethereum. And we're all lucky that we have Ethereum today, but it probably would have been in existence even earlier on top of Bitcoin if not for the core development team's hostility to people building things on top of Bitcoin. So all of that's coming back to life on top of Bitcoin Cash. So I'm really excited about those things coming soon.
Yeah.
Ashore from the Liberty Entrepreneurs Podcast. Hey, Roger. A couple of months ago, you made a news cycle about free society, and I know part of your presentation was about building a free society, a free country. Do you have any update about free societies and just a brief definition of it for anyone that doesn't know about it?
Sure. So, a brief recap is that earlier this year, myself and another friend of mine, Olivia Janssens, we announced that we have more than $100 million of capital committed, and we plan to allow the public to participate as well to raise significantly more than that. And the idea is to go around to one of the existing nation states in the world and get them to sell us a nice big chunk of land and grant us sovereignty with that land. And maybe we just might somehow manage to set the very first world in the world non-country. And I heard a rumor going around at the conference that I was going to announce the location of this. Did anybody else hear that rumor? I heard it too, and I really wish that that was true, but I'm sorry it's not true yet today. But we're working at it, and hopefully that news will be out long before Anarchapulco 5. Who plans to go to Anarchapulco next year? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'll organize it if he doesn't want to.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to ask if there's, can anybody hear me? Okay. Okay. I just wanted to ask, there's a lot of YouTubers that are out there that are kind of talking shit. If there's anything that you wanted to say to them in a response for everything that they're saying. And then also, what are your plans for Bitcoin and Bitcoin.com, and what do you see for the future?
So two questions there, right? So the first one, what should we do about people on the internet that are saying things like, be cash is be trash? Just point out to them that name calling is not an argument. It's that simple. And I think all of us are here at Anarchapulco because we're people that question the status quo. And so just because somebody says something is true, we don't necessarily believe that. We stop and think for ourselves. And right now there's two main forms of Bitcoin. There's Bitcoin Core, that is slow, expensive, and unreliable. And it's slow, expensive, and unreliable by the intentional design of the Bitcoin Core developers. And then there's Bitcoin Cash, that's fast, cheap, and reliable. So if you have two versions of Bitcoin, one that's slow, expensive, and unreliable, and another that's fast, cheap, and reliable, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out which one of those is going to be more useful to the world in the long term.
You mentioned in one of your slides that Bitcoin Core was less private, and from my understanding with Lightning Network having off-chain payments, there's chances for a much increased privacy. Is there privacy features coming for Bitcoin Cash that aren't announced that I'm not aware of, or how is that actually true?
Sure, so there used to be all sorts of privacy features on Bitcoin already. There were all sorts of coin mixing services and things like that. They got priced out of usability. When the fees became high, people could no longer afford to use any of these privacy tools. And it's really interesting to note one of the companies that was the biggest Bitcoin Core supporter and was cheerleading for them the whole way through, a company called BitFury. They literally have one of their offices on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. They hired all sorts of people that used to work in the White House. And as soon as the SegWit 2X fork completely failed, they then launched another project, I believe it's called Coin Prism or something to that effect, which is basically just a euphemism for a spying tool for governments to spy on everything that people are doing in their Bitcoin transactions. And so one of the biggest companies that was the most supportive of Bitcoin Core and the most opposed to raising the block size is literally partnering with governments, employing people that used to be in the White House, and then launching tools to spy on people's Bitcoin transactions. And when you have 1 megabyte worth of transactions per block, it's much, much easier to take a look in there because you have a smaller data set and find who's doing what with what transactions than when you have a bigger data set. So if you have 2 megabytes worth of transactions you're trying to sort through, it's much more difficult than 1 megabyte worth of transactions you're trying to sort through. And I think you should stop and think, wait a minute, this company is hiring all sorts of people that used to work in the White House to have an office. This is a Bitcoin mining company. They produce mining hardware. Why do they need an office right down the street from the White House? Why are they hiring people that used to work at the White House? Why are they lobbying against Bitcoin being allowed to scale for the entire world to use it? That sure looks suspicious to me. And so in regards to the Lightning Network, what Lightning Network? It's still just a science project at this point. Nobody's using it. It's not out there. Maybe someday it will be made to work and they'll be able to figure out all the details there. But if and when that day comes, it'll work better, faster, cheaper, and more reliably on top of Bitcoin Cash than it will on top of Bitcoin Core. So it's not even an issue.
Hello. I'm sure we all want cryptocurrencies to be adopted in a way that you say digital cash. Every transaction will be a cryptocurrency transaction eventually. 1 megabyte versus 8 megabyte blocks, that's something that can be filled up fast. Are you worried about the orders of magnitude that we want to grow the system, that eventually 8 megabyte blocks would be filled up just as easily. And if we ever increase the block size, is that going to be a problem for centralization because fewer people can afford to mine? Thank you.
So I hear this argument a lot as well, and for anybody I'm 39, I have an iPhone in my pocket. One single photo on my iPhone is 8 megabytes. The size of my very first hard drive in my computer was 8 megabytes. So a lot of people say that just increasing the block size isn't a long-term solution. But thanks to the miracle of Moore's Law, that computers get faster and cheaper and processing speed gets, doubles about every 18 months, just increasing the block size is a long-term solution. That's an exponential scaling solution right there. And I hear bullshit, but from someone in the audience, but going about Moore's Law. And if you think Moore's Law ended, you're just plain wrong. And who wants to make a $10,000 long bet on longbets.com about that? I will gladly take you up on it. Does anybody want to bring it? Come on up here if you don't believe it. And I'll take multiple bets with you in the audience, $10,000 apiece. Did any of you that said that? Come on, walk right up here so you can show your face, and I will gladly take you up on it. I see we have one taker. And so this person is a modern-day Luddite. In the 70s, in the 1970s, we had all sorts of people talk about peak oil, and the world's going to run out of oil. And here we are 40 years later, and there's still plenty of oil for everybody. Because if you study economics, you realize that market prices ration resources. And we're not going to run out of anything in which a market is allowed to exist, because people will ration it. As there gets to be less and less of a good, the price will go higher and higher, so people will use less and less of it, and there's always going to be some left. And I think I saw him coming around the stage. I would love to hear why he thinks Moore's Law is ending. And I'm looking forward to, he came down here, so I expect him to take up the bet for $10,000. How's a decade sound? Is that, a decade in the future, we'll go and see how Moore's Law held up. Does that work for you? Well, I believe you shouted that Moore's Law was bullshit, and I said that Moore's Law means that computer systems the price drops in half by about every 18 months. So a computer today, here we have a microphone. So what does Moore's Law mean to you? Let's hear what you think Moore's Law is. What are you calling bullshit on it?
Well, my perspective is that Bitcoin ultimately will win and not Bitcoin Cash. So if we're debating about Moore's Law, then I'm not going to make that.
Oh, answer the question.
Moore's Law, you're wasting everybody's time. Moore's Law is completely real.
Get out of here! Get out of here! Be gone, Phil!
I have decades of experience selling network equipment. Before Bitcoin, I sold Cisco gear, and I sold Cisco gear for decades. And I watched 1 megabit Ethernet turn into 10 megabit Ethernet, into 100 megabit Ethernet. And now we're selling 10 gigabit Ethernet, and now 100 gigabit Ethernet, right? That's like a 1.7 million times increase or so since I first started selling these things till today. And I'm not an old man. So Moore's Law is alive and well. And it seems interesting. So many different times when I have these debates about scaling Bitcoin with Bitcoin Core supporters, they absolutely refuse to answer direct questions. And it seems to be a thing over and over. And another thing that's really disappointing for me, it shouldn't be a controversial statement to say, support free speech, don't engage in censorship. And time again, I see core supporters refuse to condemn the censorship that's taken place on our Bitcoin, and sometimes even refuse to say that it's taking place. And even just yesterday, I was having a friendly debate with another core supporter, and he refused to condemn the censorship on our Bitcoin. And we posted a link to the live stream of our debate here at Anarchapulco on our Bitcoin. It took 45 seconds for it to be deleted and censored from our Bitcoin. And after that happened, while we were live on the air having our debate, he still refused to condemn the censorship over there on our Bitcoin. It's just mind-boggling. So I think there's another person here with a question.
Hey, Robert. Yes, actually, my question comes from what happened minutes ago, and many people, they tend to ignore the details about the Bitcoin takeover. Would you like to elaborate a little further about that, please? Because you say basically that it's slower, it's more expensive, but some of the people, they simply do not tend to understand how did it happen and why it did happen. As you can see, many people, yes, elaborate please.
Yeah, so I think the thing that I've underestimated or didn't see or expect enough, and probably the biggest mistake I made in my involvement with Bitcoin was I really, really underestimated just how effective censorship and propaganda is. And I guess that's why governments use those tools, because they are effective. And we saw it happen in the Bitcoin community. It used to be a wonderful, fantastic thing. Like every morning you'd wake up excited to go on the internet and predominantly our Bitcoin and BitcoinTalk.org and see what exciting things happened while I was asleep. What did the community accomplish now? And it was a wonderfully fantastic feeling every single morning until the censorship started. And anybody who posted anything that wasn't towing the party line of Blockstream and Core's agenda of morphing Bitcoin into a worldwide cash for the entire world, into some sort of settlement layer science project with the hope and promise of future technologies that might solve it in the future, the entire ecosystem just devolved into infighting and vitriol and just became a toxic space. And that's probably one of the other really, really damaging things that's happened to Bitcoin, is the brain drain that was caused by that. All sorts of incredibly smart people left Bitcoin and have gone to Dash, have gone to Ethereum, have gone to Monero, have gone to all sorts of other projects, when all of these really smart people probably would have stayed around involved in Bitcoin. And if I could go back and change something, I would have spoken out even more strongly against the censorship and spoken out against it even more. And again, we don't have time machines, but I think it's important to point out every single time we have that free speech and free and open discussion is a core virtue that we should support and not compromise on.
First of all, Roger, I want to thank you. It's because of you that I picked up my first Rothbard book 2 years ago, and I've been studying Austrian economy ever since. It's been amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. That warms my heart to hear. Anybody who's not read Murray Rothbard, pick up any of his books, and it will change your life.
I want to fact check you though, on the Lightning Network. I've been using Lightning Network on testnet for about 2 months. I opened my first Lightning channel on mainnet 3 weeks ago. It cost me 5 Satoshi per byte. It got confirmed within 1 block. And I've been using Lightning Network for thousands, hundreds of transactions. What is your statement on why is Lightning Network not there yet? And in your opinion, talk about it.
Straight thing of the day, we just saw it. In fact, we can go back here, a couple charts, and we can see, there we go. Here's Bitcoin's market share over the last year. It went from 85% to 35%. Lightning Network's still not ready for the big time, so it's basically too little too late. And if and when Lightning Network is ready, it'll work better, faster, cheaper, and more reliably on top of Bitcoin Cash than it will on top of Bitcoin Core. So I'm not opposed to Lightning Network, but basically it's just too little too late, and we retarded the rate of economic growth and the growth of cryptocurrencies in general by years. Like, we've stunted the growth of cryptocurrencies by years because we just simply didn't allow it to grow to keep up with demand. So I'm not opposed to Lightning Network, but I'm very hesitant to get involved with most of the developers behind it refuse to speak out in favor of free and open discussion about these ideas. So I think we should be able to debate Lightning Network all day long, every day. Yet many of the supporters of Lightning Network don't support that free and open discussion about it. They'll delete dissenting posts in regards to that. So, but I hope the Lightning Network solves all of our problems. But on the other hand, though, too, another author who I'm a big fan of is Harry Brown. Are there any people here who are familiar with Harry Brown? I'm a big Harry Brown fan. And he talked about the government, and he said that the government's like somebody who breaks your legs and then hands you a pair of crutches and says, see, if it wasn't for the government, you wouldn't be able to walk. And the same is true about the Lightning Network. So there was no scaling problem on Bitcoin at all. An intentional problem was caused So they broke Bitcoin, and then they said, oh, we're going to create Lightning Network to solve the problems that we created in the first place on Bitcoin. And we don't need that sort of thing in our lives, is how I see it.
Yeah.
I have 1 minute left, so I think you get the...
Hi, Roger. So the fees on Bitcoin BTC have dropped significantly in the past month. There's been people who are saying that's the result of transactions going down, and some of the transactions previously are reported to be spam. Can you comment on why you think that the fees have gone down?
Yeah, I have a slide. Let me find the right one here. So, yeah, last question, and I got 30 seconds. So that big giant blue chart there, that's the Ethereum number of transactions, and all the other altcoins there. So basically, less people are using Bitcoin than otherwise would have been. So the transactions have moved to altcoins, and they would have been on Bitcoin previously, and that's why the fees have gone down. So less people are using it, exactly like I was here at Anarchapulco predicting last year. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Roger Beard.
So I realize everybody's probably hungry, but I had a couple of quick announcements, so if you can try to not leave just yet. Who likes the paintings that have been provided for us by number 1?